All right, it's 7 o'clock, so I will call the October 4th, 2021 meeting of the Hingham School Committee to order. Welcome, everyone.
Recording in progress.
This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, temporarily amending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. This is being recorded by the Town of Hingham and also by Harbor Media. If anyone else is planning to record, could you raise your hand? Okay, I see Jenna Manto from the Hingham Journal is also recording. Is anyone else recording? Okay, seeing none, I will just mention that the members of the school committee are participating remotely tonight. They are Michelle Eyre, Jen Benham, Ness Carenti, Carlos De Silva, Tim Dempsey, Liza O'Reilly, and myself, Carrie Nee. The first item of business, 2.1, is to approve the minutes of the joint meeting with the Select Board and Advisory Committee held on September 14th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting held with the Select Board and Advisory on September 14th, 2021.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, we'll do roll call vote. Michelle Eyre.
Aye.
Jen Benham.
Aye.
Ness Carenti.
Aye.
Carlos De Silva.
Aye.
Tim Dempsey.
Aye.
Liza O'Reilly.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Minutes are approved. Number 2.2 is to approve the minutes of the September 20th, 2021 school committee meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the September 20th, 2021 school committee meeting.
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion on this one?
Carrie, I believe under the subcommittees, we omitted adding that on the 29th, I would be attending the South School Council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
If you
Can
could
add that in?
reflect that. Thank you.
Okay. And then Liza, I know you had some edits too.
Yeah, on the approval of minutes to reflect what the agenda said, I wanted to add that the approval of minutes of the joint meeting with the Select Board and Advisory Committee held on September 14th, 2021 were tabled until the October 4th, 2021 meeting because all members did not have the draft minutes to review. And then under the driver's education program, I wanted to add where it says, and asked questions about financial assistance for students who may qualify, to also include and the financial accounting of the program. And then under the superintendent search process, I wanted to add a decision that was made. My proposal is to add to the end of the paragraph, Chair Carrie Nee recommended that the school committee follow a similar process as the previous search by having the salary and negotiations subcommittee coordinate the initial stages of the search process, and the committee agreed by consensus.
Okay, does anyone object to those changes? Okay, seeing none. Do we need a proposed motion or?
Motion to approve the minutes as amended by member Liza O'Reilly.
Yep, and
And Carlos De Silva.
Carlos De Silva, sorry.
Okay,
And I'll second that again.
thank you. All right, all in favor? Michelle?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well, so those minutes are approved. Number 3 is questions and comments. The Hingham School Committee encourages community engagement and welcomes questions and comments as agenda items are discussed at the meeting. In addition, we've set aside up to 15 minutes at the beginning of this meeting for comments or questions that fall under the purview of the school committee and are not already on tonight's agenda. If any guest wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. And when recognized, unmute yourself, state your name and address, and address your comments to the chairperson. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker and must relate to topics within the scope of responsibility of the school committee. As established by Massachusetts general laws, the responsibilities of the school committee are to 1, select and evaluate the superintendent, 2, review and approve budgets for public education in the district, and 3, establish educational goals and policies for the schools in the district. Speakers are encouraged to present their remarks in a respectful manner and to consider the privacy interests of others. The public comment period is not a time for debate or response to comments by the school committee. The school committee is not adopting or endorsing any of the comments made during the public comment period. So with all of that said, if anyone wishes to make a comment during comment period, if you could just use the raise hand function. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Number 4 is the superintendent's report. Gary, it's you.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody on Zoom. It's been a while, only like, what, 2 days? So anyway, I want to give you an update on a few things to kind of keep you in the loop on what's happening. First of all, I want to talk about the enrollment for the district. We got our enrollment for October 1, and I want to recite that now. At the elementary school, we are from pre-K, actually from K to 5, we are 1,713 students. At the middle school, we are 878. At Hingham High School, we are 1,207. And in preschool, right now, we have 73 students. That brings us to a total of 3,871 students that are enrolled in the district today. That's October 1. All right, so I thought that would be important for you to have for background. And that's something that is, we watch that throughout the year and see how that fluctuates from time to time. The next thing I want to report on is COVID cases. I did a report on Saturday at our meeting. I was too short on the number that I reported on, and I want to give you the numbers that we have right now. At East Elementary, we have 1 student and 2 faculty members that have tested positive last week. And at the high school last week, we had 2 students test positive. So overall in the district, we have 5 total. I think Saturday I mentioned we had 2, but overall we have 5 total students as of the last week that were tested positive for COVID. And of course, our typical protocols take place in the building, so we can inform close contacts and things of that nature to those that apply. The next thing I want to talk about is we are going through visiting sessions for Foster Elementary. That's with the staff, just really taking a look at what the research has to inform the participants around school design, modern school design. And we actually have had 3, we'll have 2, we've had 2 working sessions so far. We'll have another one this week. We have a group of educators and designers that are actually traveling to look at other schools, to take a look at key features on those buildings. But it's an exciting time. It's a great deal of work. But one of the things that we want to share with the community is that we're doing a lot of legwork ahead of time to determine what the future of Foster looks like. And there's a great deal of planning and organization that's taking place to actually highlight what that building is going to become. Just to give everyone an idea, the building committee has not heard plans or designs for a renovation or a completely new building. That is to come. And the work that the designers will be engaged in is to actually determine what is the best approach to go forward with the school. And that will be taken up by the building committee and then presented to the school committee. So it's a great deal of work, but it's exciting work, and it'll be exciting for the Foster educational community. And the last thing I have to report on tonight is I wanted to give you just the general community, an overview very quickly of what my goals will be for the year. And I think it's important that everyone kind of gets a sense of what I'll be working on. We talked about it on Saturday, but one of the things that we're going to work diligently on between now and the end of the school year is the strategic plan. I have a goal of actually completing strategic plan and framework by May, and hopefully by June, beginning of July, we can have a finished document that will actually help lead the district. We haven't determined whether it's a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan. I imagine that probably be a 3-year plan, because a 5-year plan in this environment may be too aggressive to undertake. So we'll be working on that, and hopefully, I feel very confident that we'll get this work done. It's a monumental amount of work, but I want the community to realize that we will be looking for input in the form of surveys, in the form of information from the community, so that we can incorporate those thoughts and trends that we see into the strategic plan. And the next thing that we're challenged with this year is our budget, because we do have a challenging budget that we need to put forth to the town. We did have an increase to the budget last year that has to be sustained this year, or we have to look at how we're going to make ends meet, which is somewhat challenging. On top of that, we have a potential building that's going to go to town meeting. And also back to the budget for a bit, there's a potential that we may need an operational override to actually fund the budget for the school department for next year. So that's up in the air, and we'll be working on that as the days go forward. And the next big item of conversation around my goals is really transitioning and helping to appoint the next superintendent of schools for the Hingham Public Schools. And that is going to be taking place very soon. That is something that the school committee would like to move forward at a steady pace, to be able to appoint and transition that next superintendent. And I have mentioned the Foster project. That's a big goal for the town. The Foster School has been on the radar for quite some time. We are in the pipeline for funding with the MSBA. We're not funded yet. We need to demonstrate what the need is, have a budget, and work on that prior to presenting information to the MSBA. So we're in the queue for that process, and we're working towards that diligently. And the last goal that I'll be working on this year is really communication. That's one thing I've mentioned at this table in the last month, is we're working heavily to enhance the communication in the district. We're going to be looking at appointing a coordinator for communications for the district, and that is something that we're working on. And we may have someone in place in the next week to 2 weeks to be able to help assist and direct that function in the district. And one last comment around goals. I just want the community to know that, yeah, these are 5 goals. Those are highlights and key features of what we'll be working on, but there are so many other things that have to get done just to run the school system. And we'll be working with my team on a daily basis just to accomplish these goals, and also accomplish what we need to do to run the school system. So I'm grateful to be here to support you all, and to support our team to get this work done. So with that said, Chairman Nee, I want to turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions on the committee?
Okay.
Oh, it looks like so Tim, and then Carlos, then Michelle.
This is just a teeny one. When you give the COVID numbers for Hingham, do you also give the number of students who maybe don't have a positive test but have to quarantine because they didn't opt in to test and stay?
We don't have that.
I don't know if we have any quarantining students right now who aren't positive. I'm
not aware of any, but what I can do is, if we do, Tim, moving forward, we can include that. It's very,
thank you very much.
It's very minimal if we do, but I will collect that information.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Carlos.
Dr. Maestra, is the 3,800 number of currently students enrolled into the district, does that include the out-of-district students and homeschooling students?
No, that does not.
Okay, thank you.
That is only students that are in the seats of our schools.
Thank you.
Okay.
Michelle?
When you have a chance, Gary, would you be able to provide us with the enrollment by school as well as by grade, so we can sort of track enrollment? And are there 18 kids in the kindergarten class, or are there 25 in the kindergarten classes?
Yeah. I can actually give you I can actually give you the report now. I have it in front of me. But it's not going to give you the grade. It's not going to give you how many grades we have and what the average class size is. It's going to give you what we have in school. So let me just walk through this real quick. At East Elementary, preschool, 73 students. At kindergarten, we have 85. Grade 1, 66. Grade 2, 70. Grade 3, 68. Grade 4, 59. And grade 4, 71. That brings us to a total of 419. So go to Foster. We have kindergarten, 47. Grade 1, 69. Grade 2, 86. Grade 3, 62. Grade 4, 75. And grade 5, 80. That's for a total of 419. Plymouth River, we have 53 students in kindergarten. Grade 1, we have 58. Grade 2, we have 67. Grade 3, 60. Grade 4, 75. Grade 5, 62 for a total at Plymouth River of 375. Now going over to South, we have kindergarten at 77. Grade 1, 76. Grade 2 at 80. Grade 3 at 90. Grade 4, 95. And grade 5 at 82 for a total of 500. I can forward these numbers to you via email, school committee members. That way you have it. Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And now let's look at the middle and high school. At sixth grade, we have 313. Grade 7, we have 263. Grade 8, we have 302 for a total of 878. Hingham High School, grade 9, 264. Grade 10, 294. Grade 11, 327, and grade 12, 319. Post-grads, we have 3, which gives us a total of 1207. All right?
Thank you.
And I will forward these to you this evening. That way you have them.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Not seeing any. Next is communications. Gary, have you received any communications?
No, I have not.
Okay, anyone else in the committee? Okay, not seeing any. Item 6.1 is to hear an update on the superintendent search. There's not a ton to report out yet, but we can say that the job has been posted to MASS and School Spring and all the places where we normally post superintendent jobs. NESDEC will be holding a workshop for salary and negotiation subcommittee with participation of the full school committee tomorrow night. And I just ask the school committee members, just remind you to please come prepared to discuss the ideal candidate profile, because we'll be doing some editing. Next is 7 new business. Michelle, did you have something on this?
I did, sorry, yes, just in the interest of time, and because Anita Levysis is one of my favorite as a former alumni of Hingham High School. But I just want to see, do we want to just do the drama club field trip first and then go to the item 7.1? Would that be okay?
Is everyone is everyone in the committee okay with that?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, great. Well, so why don't we do 7.2 first, and then we'll come back to 7.1.
So you want me to kick it off?
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks.
Hi, tonight we have a field trip request for New York City in April. This is a drama trip that, from my understanding, has taken place in years past. And Anita is here to talk about the proposed trip. And the agenda for the trip is somewhat a framework of trips in the past, but from what we understand, it'll be very, very similar to what has happened in the past. So with that said, Anita, welcome, and thank you for being here tonight to present this.
My pleasure. I will just say it's really weird after 29 years being asked to do this, but happy to be here. Yeah, the New York that we've been taking for more than that, but that's my experience with it. And it is for both the students who take drama class, as well as the kids who are drama club members. Some of them are both in class and do that. And of course, some just do the extracurriculars. We go into New York, we leave early Friday morning, we come home not super late on Sunday night. In that time, we see 3 shows, depending on budget and things. Sometimes they're all Broadway shows, sometimes they're an off-Broadway show. It really depends on what the kids choose because they spearhead most of the choosing of the things. As we said, there's a framework that we've been following because it works really well. So we just kind of plug in different choices. And those kind of things, like, for example, one of the shows we're possibly looking into, they don't yet have pricing for April. So it's not necessarily a day-by-day kind of configuration, but we put in a bunch of requests. They come back and say whether we can or can't or don't know yet. And so it is a constantly kind of moving thing. Usually it's sometime in January when everything is finalized. Once in a great while, it takes a little longer than that. If we don't see 3 Broadway shows, it's 2 Broadway shows and an off-Broadway show. In addition to that, we do 2 to 3 touristy things. In the years past, we've gone to a number of museums. We've gone to the USS Intrepid, which is, it's a museum, but it's really beautiful. The Wax Museum, which is, if you've never done it, as cheesy as it sounds, it's actually so much fun. And those kind of things. We also try, and this is probably the most tenuous of our plans right now, just because of what New York has endured in the past 18 months, is often on Saturday night, we try to see an improv troupe, where these are people taking classes and professionally making a living. Most of them are wanting to be actors, where they take suggestions from the audience and dazzle us and make us laugh for an hour and a half with those kind of things. And our program is largely based in an improvisational format. So it's really nice for the kids to see some people who are really, really big. In addition to that, of course, there's meals we feel like we eat all the time. We also, and this is one of my favorite parts, either Saturday or Sunday morning, usually take classes with some Broadway professionals. We pick 1 or 2 classes, depending how big the group is. The kids self-select which course they want to go to. And there's always really great feedback for the kids in addition to whatever the topics are. Sometimes it's been improvisation or stage combat, the art of the quick change, special effects makeup, what an audition is like for a Broadway actor, and those kind of things. And they try, the company, there's a couple companies who do this. They try really hard to find actors who are in the shows that we're seeing that will do these, so it makes another nice little connection for the students. And there's some downtime. It's like just enough downtime that the kids feel like they're getting somewhere with it, and really they have to eat and be back in 25 minutes. So they feel like it's a big deal, and it's not. As far as those things go, we stay in a hotel in New Jersey. Why? There's nothing you're going to sneak out of a hotel for to go to near the Meadowlands. But it's also a lot less expensive to be able to stay there. Part of what I think every tour group goes now with hotels is part of the cost. They actually hire a security guard from like about midnight to 5 a.m. So the kids have no way of sneaking out of their rooms and things like that. And it's worked really, really well in years past. There's pockets of time that we get to talk about what we've seen, what we liked, what we didn't, whether that's at one of our meals or on the bus going to the next place. Once we've gotten back to the hotels, a lot of informal chats and things like that. So it really is one of my favorite weekends of the school year, I have to admit. I'm not trying to put Michelle on the spot. Michelle's been with us several times when her boys were part of Drama Club. And I invite any of you if you want to come along, because it really is great. Any questions?
The parents chaperones are probably the most unruly people, and the ones that Anita has to talk to the most. They are always the ones who are late to get to the class, overslept, we're just getting a cup of coffee. So it's definitely the parents are the ones who need the chaperone.
Yeah, the kids are pretty terrific.
Well, it sounds like a great trip. Does anyone else have any questions about it?
Just I'm envision in April the world will be back to normal, but I also envisioned that 6 months ago we'd be back in school right now, mask free. So I'm not a fortune teller. I assume that there'll be some sort of COVID policy, whatever, about the future April world that we'll be living in.
Really two things to bring up about that. One is for the first time ever, really pushing the insurance that the travel agency provides. There's like a basic one, but for I think it's $33 or $35. That is a cancel for any reason, so that families can get back the absolute maximum of their funds should something happen. I mean, if the world shuts down again, if something happens on Broadway, ticket money is refunded. Hotel money is probably refunded. So there's not, but still there's certain expenses, as with anything, our travel agents already putting time in to this. So these kind of things are never 100% because of those things, but I will it's already changed in our letter, highly suggesting everybody takes a look at the insurance, the brochure they sent us, which is online. And I'm certainly happy to forward to anybody here if you would like me to do so. It's like 7 or 8 pages long. It's crazy. A lot of legalese. Additionally, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this up in my little preview there, New York City is a vaccinated city. You cannot go to the theater. You cannot go to a restaurant, into a hotel, into museums without being vaccinated. So the kids will have to be able to prove that to me beforehand, because they have to be the second vaccination shot, assuming it's not Johnson & Johnson, has to be finished 2 weeks before we go, or it is unacceptable. And that's just New York State. We have no control over that whatsoever. I happen to be going to New York this weekend, and I'll see, how easy or difficult. From what I've heard, it's actually a pretty quick process. There's an app I'm going to be recommending to the students, so they don't even have to bring their actual card with them. They'll be able to snap a picture of it, so it's on their phones. Any parent who wants me to hold on to their kids, I'm happy to do that too, if perhaps they don't have a smartphone. So your ID and your school ID counts, or your license for those kids who have it. They do have a line that says if you have a severe medical or religious exemption, but that requires a letter and having a COVID test. So that runs into a riskier thing, since they'd have to test and have the results back on Thursday before we leave, the day before we leave. So we're kind of sticking to the whole, you really have to have those vaccinations done because New York City says so.
Great. Is there any financial aid available for students who might need it to participate?
We have often had our Parents for Drama organization, what we refer to as scholarship, some kids in on time to time. And I say time to time because we do offer the trip every year. Often what we will do is, when we are aware of particularly an outgoing senior whose family maybe hasn't been able to afford to go, that's often when we put it in. If it's a matter of a little bit of difference, we can always make up those kind of things as well. And I encourage kids to come and talk to me if that's a problem, to see if we can't figure out a way to take care of that.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other hands. So would somebody like to make a motion to approve this trip?
I will make a motion to approve the proposed drama club field trip to New York City in April 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, and we will go roll call. Michelle?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So the trip is approved, and have fun.
Oh, we do. I have to admit, it's a great weekend. Let me know if you want to come. Ness, I'm waiting for you.
It sounds
Thank you, everybody.
I'm definitely in.
great.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we're going back to 7.1, which is to discuss a potential therapy dog for Hingham High School. Gary, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Good evening, everybody. This is an item that I learned about a couple of weeks ago, and this is relative to a therapy dog that was proposed last year, I believe. And at that time, it was decided that that concept of a therapy dog would be put on hold. And I think there's some motivation to actually have an update on what's happening with that concept of having a therapy dog at the high school. I know it's a growing trend of having support animals in schools. And tonight we have the principal of Hingham High School, Rick Swanson, to actually provide an update of where things are with that. Keep in mind that there is no acknowledgement from the school district that the therapy dog is in play, that it was put on hold last year. And here we are today picking up that conversation to see what updates we have for the community and more importantly, the school committee. So with that said, Principal Swanson, the floor is yours through you, Chairwoman Nee.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maestas, and thank you to the whole school committee for adding this to the agenda tonight. I should also thank you for your support of the trips at the high school and the agenda item that we just finished. Your support a couple of weeks ago of Dr. Young's request for the April trip to Central Europe, and now Ms. Levy-Sist's request for the trip to New York. Another sign that better days are here and continuing to get better. So I really appreciate the committee's support for both of those initiatives, and grateful for your time here tonight to revisit an issue that we first discussed at a school committee meeting back in February. And as I'm recalling that meeting, and for those of you who were there, I'm sure you remember too, I believe it was the single longest school committee meeting of the entire last couple of years. And that's really saying something after what we had been through. And I remember getting to that point on the agenda, and it was about 11:15 at night. And what a treat to be starting this at 7:30 instead of 10:45. And we weren't done talking about it till almost 11:30 on that night. It was a long time ago. It felt like the world was a whole lot different then. But it was back in February. A lot has changed, of course, as Dr. Maestas mentioned. The subject was tabled at the time because we were really consumed by efforts to reopen schools. And our hope at the time was that we would revisit it at some point in the future. And I'm glad we're getting around to that tonight. Hingham High School's interest in trying to bring a resource dog to our school has not waned in the time since we first discussed it back in February. I would say we're in fact even more convinced than we were at the time that this could be a really significant step forward for our school and for our community. And so our interest in this is very much still strong, but a lot of other things have changed. I wanted to give you an update tonight on a few important changes that I hope will help to point us toward development of a policy that would enable Hingham High School to have access to a resource dog at our school. First, as you probably recall, in February, when we first discussed the topic, I announced that the Hingham High School class of 2020 had offered a very substantial gift that would enable the purchase of a trained resource dog. And as generous as that gift was, and as appreciative as we were and continue to be for their generosity, I'm happy to report that the funds they offered to us and actually had given to us have been returned. And that's because the school at this point does not require additional funding for the opportunity to bring a resource dog to our school. And that's because of an exciting development that happened at the end of the spring, when our school resource officer was gifted a dog that is ideally suited to serve as a resource dog for our school. This dog came to Hingham through the efforts of our animal control officer, Leslie Badger, who's got a tremendous network of resources that helped to find the dog. It's a rescue dog that's now 7 months old and has been fostered by our school resource officer over the last 4 months. The puppy has been recognized by a nonprofit organization called Paws New England that supports therapy dogs and their handlers. They've selected this dog as being especially well suited because of her temperament to serve as a resource dog. And the dog has actually already begun some very extensive training over the summer during the time that it's been fostered by our school resource officer. There was also a grant from the Plymouth County District Attorney, Tim Cruz, through his office's Community Programs Fund for care of the dog and for ongoing training of the dog. Additional grants are available through that program on a renewable basis in the years ahead. And so we're really excited about the opportunity to potentially bring this particular dog to Hingham High School through those really fortunate developments over the past few months. At the same time, Hingham Animal Clinic has offered free vet care for the dog and has fully updated the dog on its vaccines and all of its shots at no cost. So we're looking at a very substantial gift in this case, not from our students or any graduating class, but rather through the combined efforts of a number of community partners. And so a few other updates. The dog has completed a lot of training this summer, is actually certified now as an American Kennel Star Puppy, which meets several key standards of appropriate dog behavior and temperament. Training plans to continue until the dog fulfills its AKC Good Citizenship certification, and that's a really notable step. Our two high school counselors, or two high school adjustment counselors rather, are among the strongest champions of the concept of bringing a resource dog to our school. And beyond that, one of them, Jessica Hoge, has actually offered to complete training and become a co-handler of the dog as well, as a sign of her commitment, and our counseling department in general's commitment to trying to make this happen, if at all possible. Another update worth noting is the success of the school's growing relationship with another dog, probably familiar to most people who are on the school committee, and I'll bet to others who are in attendance here tonight. A dog named Taco, who you've probably seen around town, and if you visited any of our schools, Taco has made weekly visits to Hingham High School going back to last March, and was really an important part of our return to normalcy and in the search to put smiles behind the masks of our students during recent months. And so Taco's a 9-year-old chocolate lab who's owned by the Grady family here in Hingham. And since last March, Taco's been visiting at least once a week, frequently seen out at the front door every Monday morning, greeting students, and then on occasion when requested, visiting classrooms and doing the type of thing that we would love to see happen on a daily basis. Visiting our supported learning center, visiting the transition room, maybe saying hello to students outside in the outdoor dining area behind the cafeteria, and being a resource to our counselors as well. And so Taco has quickly become one of the most popular figures at our school, human or otherwise, and has really validated what we thought would be the case, that having access to a resource dog at our school could make a tremendously positive impact for students and for the community as a whole. So it's the culmination, I think, where we are now, something our counselors have been asking for quite a few years. And I'll admit that early on, I think 2 or 3 years ago, I needed to be convinced myself and was not necessarily the strongest proponent of the idea, but have listened with an open mind to our counselors and now have seen firsthand the impact that Taco has had in her visits over recent months, and in reading some of the research that supports the benefits of a resource dog to a school. And then also listening to our students. This has been a key point for a new student organization that's had a pretty significant impact called the Hingham High School Unity Project. And this found a spot on their action plan last year, and talking about ways that our school could grow more connected, and talking about things that could bring people together. A resource dog was high on their list as well. So I've been sold on the idea and more convinced now than ever that it could be a really vital asset. And I guess there's any number of people in our school who would have loved to have made this presentation tonight, and it was me that was invited to give it. But I'm sure we would not have difficulty finding students, staff members, counselors especially, who would join me in asking for the support of the school committee to enable this to happen for our school. I would add as well that the use of a resource dog by our school resource officer would be in line with national efforts of police reform, with the goal of increasing positive interactions between our school resource officer and the students they serve. Also would point to the success of other programs at neighboring schools, including some really close to home: Hanover, Marshfield, Plymouth, Wellesley, among many others locally, and thousands others around the country that have been doing this for a number of years now and have met with real success. I'm eager to see our school join with those schools and move in that direction. I believe that resource dogs could make a really positive impact on any school's culture, and that it would for ours. Both for individual students, particularly those in crisis, and for the school community as a whole, that it would have a really positive impact. With regard to students in crisis, I would say clearly that we've never had more students in crisis than we do now. As much as we can say in confidence and with optimism that we're moving into a much better period as opposed to where we were last year, the after effects of a really traumatic experience will be with us for a long time. And a therapy dog, while certainly not a magic bullet or cure-all, could be an important piece of addressing the social emotional needs of our students. And with regard to things that can bring a community together, I think this could be an important step as well. And I think we could all agree that our community is looking for new sources of positive energy and strength, and this could be an important part of it. So as principal, I believe this is a really strong opportunity for us. It could be a great way to make our school better, to help us grow more connected, to better meet the needs of our students. So I'm hoping that together we can make that happen. And that's all I have in terms of some prepared remarks and updates on this. Be happy to address any questions if you have them, and would be delighted to work with you in the weeks ahead to see if we can move this forward. So again, thank you very much for the time tonight, and happy to address any questions if you have them.
And so I think we have, thank you for that. I think we have a few questions. Just one quick one before we get started. So this puppy that you're considering, Opry, I think is the name, who owns the dog?
The dog right now is owned by Officer Ford. It was gifted to him through this donation that came through our animal resource officer, Leslie Badger, and with the support of the Hingham Police Department was placed in his care. I think we saw this as an opportunity when the dog was available last spring, and given its temperament and it's clearly very well suited to this type of work, thought that although we had no policy in place, if we did eventually get a policy in place, this would enable us to take advantage in a very timely manner.
Right. No, just to be clear, does Officer Ford own the dog, or does the Hingham Police Department own the dog?
It's I believe in his ownership at this point, as opposed to being the property of the Hingham Police Department.
Okay. All right. I saw a bunch of hands. Do Michelle, Jen, and then us.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. This is hard because I don't want to make light, but I feel like this is a little bit like, Mom and Dad, can I get a dog? And Mom and Dad said, no, not right now. It's a good time. And now, Mom and Dad, look, I found a dog. Can I keep him? So it sort of feels like this is already here. And now we're in this position of having to sort of backtrack to make a policy about it. And I'll be honest, I'm just really disappointed, because I'm like, Leslie Badger was on the call. She was at that meeting in February, and the committee was pretty clear that we had issues with that we didn't have a policy about the dog, and that we had concerns about the law enforcement officer in the building being the one with the dog. And now here we are, whatever, 7 or 8 months later, and there's a dog that Leslie Badger got to give to Officer Ford for him to potentially use at the school. So I guess my biggest question is, I mean, have you heard from families or students who have an issue with a police officer potentially having a dog in the building? I mean, just for full disclosure, because I have heard from a few who do not think it is a good, the optics of it are not ideal for some students.
Okay, so the question, have I heard objections from anyone about a school resource officer being the handler of a dog?
Yes.
Yeah, I've heard from one person who has expressed that concern to me. So I had a conversation with that one person. I have not heard any other objections on those grounds. I heard from one other person after that meeting in February who had raised some questions about allergies. Apart from that, I haven't heard from anyone in the community, parents or students, raising objections to a therapy dog. I have heard countless or received countless messages from people who were enthusiastic about this. And as I've learned more about models that have existed at other schools, again, I've been increasingly convinced that this could work. And in a number of those cases, it is a resource officer who's the handler. In some other cases, it's a teacher or a counselor who's the handler. To me, I think our school resource officer would be an excellent handler. I would just be thrilled to have access to a resource dog in our school, period, regardless of who the handler is. I think one key point would be I'd want somebody who has got flexibility in their schedule and a person with the right temperament for this as well. And I think we have that here. So I understand that that you've heard some objections. I personally have just had those two.
Okay, Jen
Us
and
too.
then Ness. Oh, sorry, did you have anything else, Michelle?
No, that's okay.
Okay, we'll do Jen, Ness, then Liza.
Thank you, Carrie. Just I have one point and then one quick question. We're using the word resource dog and therapy dog. Is that the same thing that we're talking about, or is there a difference? And then you also mentioned that the dog is working towards AC good citizen training. Is that the final level of training that this dog will receive to ensure, the safety of the dog and the students and everybody in the school and environment, that everyone, is following through the training of the dog?
Right. I'll have to acknowledge at the outset that I'm not personally an expert in the topic, and not having been through any of this training myself. Our superintendent may be helpful in this regard as well, because I know he's got one in his own house, and that his wife is training to be a handler for a dog in Plymouth as well, with had success with several therapy dogs and resource dogs. And I know there are a variety of different terms that are used. I know I've been leaning toward the use of the resource dog, because I think in the hands of a school resource officer, the therapeutic use of the dog would probably take a back seat to things like being visible at events, improving school culture and climate, but that the dog could also, and I think more likely, when it's co-handler, if we were to go in this direction, our school adjustment counselor was trained as a co-handler for this dog, which would be an incredible advantage as well, that the dog's use would be much more in line with a therapeutic purpose that's done in the context of a counseling session. And as far as the AKC Good Citizenship certification, I think it's a widely recognized certification. And whether there are additional levels beyond that that would be pursued, I'm not really sure.
Okay, Ness.
I thank you for the update on the budget, especially I have an 11-month-old puppy, so I appreciate the costs that go into the dog the first year, especially. When I hear you talk about what the dog would be used as a resource dog, I think of, I love the idea of having a resource dog to help the kids with anxiety and stress, and kids who may be on the spectrum. So I think part of the issue has been who the handler is. And so my question is, actually, you had mentioned about the fact that you see this happening where SROs are becoming more and more of the handlers. And when we looked at it last time, I think about the dog as a therapy dog, but there's specific guidance in Mass law that states SROs should not be seen as counselors. And so I feel like there's a disconnect, because I think a therapy dog or a resource dog should be handled by a counselor, and an SRO by definition can't be, based on Mass General law. So I'm curious as to how you're seeing this play out in other locations.
Right. Again, I think in the hands of a school resource officer, the use would be more in line with culture climate issues. In the hands of a counselor the counselor would enable a more therapeutic use for the dog. It seemed to me we would be achieving best of both worlds if we could have co-handlers, one as a resource officer and one as a counselor. The resource officer having enormous flexibility in his schedule, able to bring the dog to different places at different times of the day without a full teaching schedule. Although our school resource officer does teach one class voluntarily, but is not tied down to a teaching or counseling schedule throughout the rest of the day. So is able to have that kind of flexibility and respond throughout the day to different needs. But also having one of our adjustment counselors on board, fully on board with this, trained as a co-handler for the dog, having access to really more therapeutic use would also be really beneficial. I know other schools locally, including Weymouth, have a dog in the hands of their school resource officer. And from my conversations with others at the school, including the principal, they've been very satisfied with what the dog has contributed to the school. I think our capacity to make use of this would surpass that, though, if we could also have a counselor on board with this as well. So I hope I answered your question, Ness.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
I still struggle with the handler, and I think I just don't think it's an appropriate place to have the SRO be a handler of the resource or therapy dog. So this is that's what I struggle with. It's not having the resource dog himself. It's just the handler for me.
I would also ask the question, but if not our school resource officer, who else would? I mean, the ask here is enormous. The amount of time that is required to complete this kind of certification is something that requires very, very significant sacrifice from the person who's doing it. And so I think at many schools that wouldn't have a resource officer or wouldn't have a resource dog, these are probably places that don't have someone who would be willing to go through that, to have the resource of time and the capacity, the willingness to make those kind of sacrifices. And if we have someone who is willing to do that, it would seem to me to be a real loss of an opportunity to forego that. And I'm not sure where else our school or many other schools would find someone who's willing to make that kind of a commitment. And personally grateful for that. I think we should all be.
Okay, Liza, then Tim, then Carlos.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. So, Rick, I'm struggling with similar things that Michelle said and that Ness said, in that in February, when we had this discussion, it was not just about what was happening with COVID, but that it was about the school resource officer being the primary manager and trainer of the dog. And then the other people on the call went ahead and kept going with something that we expressed we were not interested in. And I looked up with some other communities. I would be open to getting more information about how Weymouth handles the situation with their SRO, because what I read in other communities was that the dog, even if it was assigned to an SRO, it was a community-wide SRO and a community-wide dog that the police department used for all of the schools. So it wasn't in that one school all the time and with that handler. The other thing you had mentioned in your email to us, or in your message to us, that Officer Four would also be bringing the dog to sporting events and other school-related activities. And I'm a little concerned about that, because my understanding of his role as an SRO at sporting events and other school-related activities is for supervising kids. And our current existing policy about animals in the schools, you as the principal would have the right to invite an animal to the school, which I know taco is very popular. It's once a week. It's an occasional thing. But that policy also states that if there's an incident with the animal must be removed immediately. And so now if Officer Ford has this animal at an event, but there's an incident with the dog, then he can't immediately remove himself because he has other responsibilities. So I'm also trying to, manage all of this together of the SRO's responsibility with the dog. I completely understand, and I've heard too, that the students really enjoy having the dog at the school, and it's helping a lot of them. I think what we have to sort out is where's the dog being kept, who's responsible for the dog, and that the dog is not getting in the way of people doing their jobs. And that the dog is also not reflecting in the wrong way on who's handling it. And I appreciate the adjustment counselor stepping up, and I appreciate people having an interest in this, but I also want to make sure that the right person can still do their job with the students and isn't just doing the job, isn't just being a dog handler. So, I know I recognize that the dog needs a lot of training, and if Officer Ford is training a puppy, is he just doing that, or is he doing his other job too? So I have a lot of questions and concerns because of the nature of how this is all developed and how we're thinking it all through. I appreciate the interest and wanting to have a therapy animal and the benefits that it can bring to the school. I think we really have to sort out how it's being done.
Okay, thank you, Liza. Tim?
Yeah. So, therapy dogs are amazing. I work in a therapeutic school. We have a therapy dog that comes to visit. I can tell you how wonderful they are for students. I'm guessing, speak for myself, I'm fully in support of a therapy dog in the schools. I think it's an absolutely fantastic idea. I wasn't on school committee at the time, but I was on the meeting last February, and just want to echo what Liza was saying, that I don't think the one issue that was ultimately the game stopper on this was the SRO being in charge of the dog. And so I'm wondering how a year later we're back with what's in effect sort of a very similar proposal with an SRO being in charge of the dog. It doesn't, I guess what has changed since February is, if you want to speak to that, I guess, and what's the process? Because I know, Officer Ford didn't open a present on Christmas and get a dog. This was, an asked for, sought after dog. And we're just wondering about the process of obtaining a dog for Officer Ford when that was really the only issue from school committee, in my memory.
Well, I guess I would, my recollection differs on the meeting, and I don't recall leaving there with a sense that school committee wanted this with the exception of an objection to the handler. I actually recall a lot of positive conversation at the meeting at a really late hour of a number of people suggesting that this sounds like it could potentially be a good thing. And that we would, ideally move forward at some point with this. But then also a lot of reaction in the days after that, and then quickly turning back to the greater issues at hand at the time of trying to reopen schools. I think I think the issue of the handler, to me, is secondary to the issue of trying to make our school better as quickly as we can in a real way. And given this opportunity, again, it would seem like a ways not to take advantage of it. I do think if the outcome here was, to me, a regrettable choice to say this is not the ideal direction in the minds of the school committee, that they would prefer to have a therapy dog in the hands of a counselor, solely in the hands of a counselor. To me, I think the outcome is, well, we're not going to be able to have a resource dog or therapy dog at Hingham High School. We would prefer to have it in the hands of a teacher. I think, practically speaking, that is going to mean this is not something that's going to be able to happen at our school. If that were to happen, I think the outcome in the face of the reality of there is a real dog that's here and is living with our school resource officer, he would adopt the dog. It would become a pet. It would not become Opry would not become a resource dog for Hingham High School, but would have a different future. To me, that would be a real waste and a lost opportunity for our school. By no means, I hope you'll believe this, was there an intent to deceive or run an end around to try to get something that the school wanted, but an opportunity that presented itself at the end of the spring, and the hope that eventually, if we saw our way to a policy that would enable the school to have a resource dog, that this would allow us to move in that direction much more quickly. I think in dealing with the needs of the school, we're dealing with the here and now, dealing with students in crisis. We're dealing with real issues that are happening today and will happen tomorrow. And if we can enable our school to address those in a more effective manner, more quickly, then it's something we ought to do.
I appreciate that. Just because I think a lot of the sort of feeling you're getting from school committee, and certainly from myself, are the feeling that just confusion about the process and just not addressing the original concerns from the proposal last year. And most schools that have therapy dogs do not have a full-time therapy dog in the school. They have one or several dogs, sort of very similar to the model of Taco, that come in and out of the school, that come with a handler who's a community member volunteer to come in for hours here, hours there. I mean, Hingham's got a lot of dogs. So I don't know. I mean, that seems a more typical model. It seems the model that you're talking about having a full-time dog in the school, sort of to build general community as opposed to being, a therapeutic resource for the students. It sounds like to me what you're describing as a mascot, not a therapy dog. And that seems, I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I'm just like trying to wrap my head around what this dog will be used for in the school. And a general dog to build community and to build a positive feeling in the school, it seems like that's what we're talking about. I don't know if that's a question or a comment, or I want to give you a chance to.
Yeah, my sense is that it could be both. I think, and I appreciate you saying that the use of the term mascot is not a pejorative, sense, but, spirit building thing, that there's value to that. Schools do and should have mascots. There's a reason why we have them, and that's a good thing. But I very much think the role of a dog serving in the way that I've described here tonight and envision would far surpass that. And then that the dog would spend time in the counseling office, would spend time in our supported learning center, would be a frequent visitor to the transition room, would on invitation likely be visiting classrooms from time to time as well. And not that it would be working all day long. I know these dogs need a great deal of rest as well. And the dog would spend a good chunk of the day in its crate sleeping and resting up to do the good work that it would do later in the day. And as far as attending games, I really don't at all see the dog if it were with the resource officer attending a game where the resource officer is working. in terms of supervising. Would not picture the dog being there on a Friday night football game or a hockey game or, a lacrosse game against Duxbury, where we've got 2,000 people in the stands and we're very much concerned about monitoring student behavior, and we're relying on the resource officer to help us do that, but rather in much more low-key, easier types of situations where we're not as stressed about supervising big crowds. But that we may yield some mascot benefits there, but more importantly would be yielding some of the potentially therapeutic benefits during the school day, and in many cases with a co-handler as a counselor.
And my last comment, I'm sorry, I know I'm talking too much. There's a line in your proposal, and you repeated it out loud, that the use of a resource dog by our SRO is in line with national efforts of police reform with the goal of increasing positive interactions and experiences between the SRO and the students that they serve. And I would say my experience with the sort of racial justice police reform movements have been exactly the opposite of that, where this is a sort of widening of the scope of what police are expected to do and what what the community is going to, to expect the police force to do. This is what the racial justice police reform movement is really narrowing the scope of what police want to do and say keep the role down to more policing and not a therapeutic role. And I think that's one of the concerns that we have. It's putting a uniformed officer in a therapeutic role in the school. So I think that's fundamentally an issue that I know I have.
Thank you, Tim. Carlos?
I am, first of all, I don't want to repeat anything that was said. I just want to sort of say that I, for one, don't have an issue with an officer, the resource officer, being the handler of the dog. By the way, what's the name of the dog again?
Dog's name is Opry, O-P-R-Y.
Could you have named the dog Bell, Taco Bell?
Yeah. Good idea, Carlos.
But anyhow, so first of all, I don't have an issue with an officer being the handler of the dog. I believe during class would be great if we could have actually the adjustment counselor handling the dog. So I would encourage that that has, taken into consideration. And, of those hours, then, Officer Ford would be the handler of the dog. And one of the concerns that we did have, if I recall, was the cost, effective of how much this would cost us liability-wise and everything. So based on my understanding, Officer Ford would be totally responsible for the dog. And there will be no cost whatsoever to the school department. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what class does Officer Ford teaches right now voluntarily?
He teaches a course in criminal justice.
I know that other resource officers may be involved with the DARE program or other programs, which goes hand in hand with offering, some type of resource to our students. I wanted to say that, as long as you're addressing the students that have fear of dogs, I'm one of them. I was bitten by a dog when I was 12. And to be quite honest with you, my little Matt, 30 pounds, every once in a while, I'm afraid of him. And so just because I was bitten by a dog, I don't trust dogs. And I go to my friend's house, I go to Ned's house, she has a beautiful dog there. Believe me, I don't approach the dog by myself. But I want to say that, my colleagues already, mentioned about the concern. So, I had those concerns as well. But I would not have a problem with Officer Ford being the one that keeps the dog on his house and off hours. But kindly, as we, addressing this, and perhaps we'll have a policy in place that perhaps the adjustment counselor during school hours would be the main person handling the dog. And that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. I'm not going to repeat what everyone already said about this. And I was thinking about the last meeting in February, and when we walked away from that, I mean, I do remember people bringing up concerns about the SROs, the dog handler. That was one of the things we were going to have to work through if we were to go ahead with the dog that was proposed that night. We also talked about a policy, but also the logistics, the financial support, the liability, and the allergies. Do districts normally get liability insurance for these dogs? Because even if Officer Ford is responsible for it, I mean, in reality, the district could be sued if there was an incident with the dog. Do you have any sense of how that's normally handled?
I remember looking into this last winter prior to the initial presentation, and John, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had reached out to you for a comparison in some other districts and for conversation with our insurance company. And my understanding was that we felt as though we would likely be covered with our existing policy, and that was typically the case in other districts as well.
Okay. John, did you?
Well, I don't recall the other districts, but I did talk to the insurance company, and they did send a series of guidelines to, ensure that you manage through those guidelines, for your insurance. So, yeah, it would be covered.
Okay, thank you. I think the other thing that I do have concerns with the SRO handling the dog. Just because I see a fundamental difference between somebody who's in uniform with a firearm handling the dog versus a counselor who is trained to, kind of guide students' social emotional learning and health. So, I think the other thing that troubles me about this too is, when we talked in February that we decided that there were some steps we had to go through before we did this. And it sounds like last spring, this kind of went ahead. And I guess I'm wondering why the school committee is just being looped in now.
Well, I guess a couple of things. I think one of the main concerns, as I recall, that emerged from the February meeting was a concern over school ownership of the dog, along with the expense, concerns about funds from a recent class being used for the purchase of the dog, even though they had voluntarily made the offer and made the gift. And having addressed that and looking at an outcome potentially here where the school would be the recipient of essentially a gift that was made to someone else, but without any expense. And so I've been in communication with administration all along on this, and Dr. Austin and I had talked about this extensively as it developed in June and into July, and then in talking to Dr. Maestas after he became superintendent in mid-August, and informed him about the possibility or our hope to revisit this issue, and the possibility of working with a dog that had already arrived and was being taken care of by our SRO. And that's why we wanted to look forward to try to get it back onto an agenda at that point as soon as possible.
Okay. Carlos, did you have another question, or your hand's still up?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, I see a couple of other hands up from participants. So Tien Dos Juarez, if you could just unmute yourself and state your name and address, please, for the record.
Yes, thank you. My name is Tien Dos Juarez. I live at 3 Beecham Place. I am a mom of 4 students, of 3 now at the Hingham Public School System. Thank you so much for coming up and taking the time to talk in regards to this. Mr. Swanson and I have met sometime in February. I was one of the ones that did object to this and voiced my concerns to Mr. Swanson about having a resource dog handling, particularly by the resource officer. I think this would be a significant step backward. in bringing a therapy dog with a resource officer. In that particular meeting, besides handling with COVID, there were numerous parents that voiced their concerns. In my meeting with Mr. Swanson, I also shared with him many stories from people of color, from other students that had a lot of concerns. Unfortunately, there was no follow-up. I'm sure he was quite busy, and I completely understand with the year that we've had. Moving forward, I think that in his presentation today, there's a lot of mixed messaging in terms of who's handling the dog, the funding of the dog, rehabilitation with the support from people that have fear with the dog. There's so many things that is brought up today that I think that we really need to take time. I feel like this is an ultimatum, like one for all. Like if we don't do this now, if we don't handle this particular dog with the resource officer, then we're not going to get this therapy dog. I don't necessarily think that that is the way to handle this, and particularly that we are moving forward in our equity task force and bringing other resources in other areas that's quite need in our school system. There's high priority. Obviously, social emotional need is a high priority, but it's not necessarily going to be taken care of by a therapy dog or just a therapy dog. And if a therapy dog, and I'm all supportive of a therapy dog, which I did share with Mr. Swanson, that it has to be handled properly and also with the proper handler. And to state in this meeting that we're not going to have it if the resource officer is not handling, we won't have it all. I think that is like giving us an ultimatum. And I don't necessarily think that we should be given that. Particularly, this should be handled very carefully. So I really appreciate the time of our school committee members asking important questions, listening to parents that were on that call, and more information of students and parents that will be voicing their concern about this particular situation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tian. Diane DiNapoli, if you could unmute yourself, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. Diane DiNapoli, 16 Gardner Street. Thank you for taking my comment. I just want to answer Jen's question a little bit. There is the difference between a service dog and a therapy dog. A service dog is usually trained to do, say, one specific task, and sometimes it's medical. A therapy dog is really, it has less rights legally as well as far as access. So a therapy dog is simply for social and emotional support, not say sniffing, seizures, or things like that. So there is some difference in the law, the access a service dog and a therapy dog would have. This is something that the Commission on Disabilities is looking into. One of our members is getting a therapy dog. He's waited 3 years on a list to receive the dog, which is quite common if you are waiting to get a therapy dog. There is a tremendous amount of training. The minimum hours to train to even have a therapy dog is close to 120 hours. So it is a huge commitment to have one of these animals. And it's something I've personally looked into, and I just know I could not take the time and the effort and the energy to do it. So I really applaud Officer Ford for taking this initiative. And I do hope some of these logistical issues that have been raised about fear and allergies and liabilities can be worked out so that the children can have the therapy dog in the school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Diane. All right, does anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Michelle, do you? No. Okay, it looked like you're unmuting yourself.
I was just checking to the participants to check, but you're good.
Okay, all right, great. Yeah, and just to clarify, Jen had asked about a therapy dog versus a resource dog, not a service dog. So, I mean, I guess we could take this up in policy. How are people feeling about this?
I'm willing to continue to explore it as long as we can really get clarity on what's happening. And what Diane just said, this type of dog requires 120 hours of training. I mean, I said it before, but I will be really honest. In the February meeting, we did say we didn't want the SRO handling the dog, and then they go ahead and get a dog from their colleagues at the Hingham Police Department, and now he's training a dog for 120 hours, and he's got a job. And and that's not something that it wasn't part of us saying. I mean, who said, yeah, go ahead and get the dog as part of your job? Now, I'm gonna take a deep breath and hold back my tone of voice. I apologize for that, but I am willing to explore this more to make it work for the school. But I think we all need to make sure that we're all in this, we are all very clear about what everyone's expectations are before we finalize all this. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I could, I'd just like to make clear too that all the training that's happened is certainly not been happening during school hours. That was all done over the summer and has been done by Officer Ford on his own time, and without any guarantee that this was going to become possibly part of his job at school. But having seen an opportunity to potentially be ready for this, if the opportunity presented itself again, done entirely on his own time over the summer, which I think represented a very significant sacrifice as well, and something I'm really appreciative for. And I guess in closing, the last thing I would want to add is just a very sincere request particularly to our school committee, but also to anyone else who's interested in this issue, whether it's a student who's listening in or parent or other community member, as they're forming their opinion on this and on the potential value of a dog that was handled for much of the day by a school resource officer, in particular this school resource officer, to please talk to people who are in the building, who've interacted with him on a regular basis. I know I for one have worked with him for close to a decade now, and in lots of really difficult, intense situations over the course of that time, both as assistant principal and then as principal, and have been constantly appreciative of the expertise, the competence, and the compassion that he brings to his work. I know our counselors to a person would say the same thing. And that students who have worked closely with him as well, whether those taking his class, those on the wait list to take his class, those in one of the 3 clubs that he voluntarily advises, would also feel as though here's a person that has really made major contributions to our school community, and with an opportunity to make even greater contributions, and who wants to do it in the best possible way, and has eagerly sought to partner with a very valued member of our counseling department as well. And by no means is this presented as an ultimatum to the school committee or to this community to say, well, it's either this or it's not going to happen. That's, to me, just a realistic assessment of where things stand now. This looks to me like a very real opportunity, and one that we could enable to happen in the near term. And I do feel a sense of urgency in addressing these issues. And I would make no apology for that, because we are facing very real issues each and every day at the school, and they've grown worse. This is a desire on my part and others in our community to try to move us forward in any way we can. And if there was anybody else out there on our staff who was willing to do this, I would be just as eager to partner with them as well. I think we need to look for ways to get better. Whenever we have a chance to do it, we should do it.
I want to be very clear that this is not about Officer Ford. This is about the role of the SRO. Okay, I didn't hear any criticism of him at all tonight, and I certainly don't have any.
Good.
Okay, so just to make sure that we're all crystal clear on that.
I
Michelle,
just want to, I'm sorry, can I echo what you're saying, Carrie? That
Yeah.
part of what school committee is tasked with is setting policy separate from personnel.
Right.
So I've never actually met Officer Ford. I'm sure he's a wonderful person and a wonderful asset to the school. But we need to set policies separate from personalities.
Yep.
There might not be the officer in that job.
Very well said. Michelle and then Carlos.
Yeah, sorry, that was what I was actually going to say too, that I just wanted to be very clear that this was not anything whatsoever against Officer Ford. I mean, I think his contributions to the school district have been plentiful and have been great. I think he is very well respected member of the school community. And this is simply about who would make the best, what is the role of a resource officer in the school and a law enforcement officer in the school building versus therapy and counseling center in our schools. So that was the only part of it that was, so I just wanted to make that clear as well. And I think it's just, I mean, we all obviously, I think there's no one here disagrees that an animal, particularly a cute dog in the school is going to be bad for kids, right? But it's a good idea and there's a lot of merit to it. And I hear that it's, you know, I've heard about the stories of Taco and the staff is appreciative and the students are appreciative. So it's just what's the proper policy to set for this. So to answer your question, if policy is willing to take this up, I know we have a lot of things going on this year, but I mean, if they are up for taking it up, I would like to see what they can come up with.
Okay, thank you. Michelle? Not Michelle, Carlos.
So I am in favor of policy looking into this and coming up with a policy. I also would encourage that when policy is reviewing this, that you would address Plan B should the main handler retire or win the lottery. What is a Plan B? Would that dog stay with the district? I think it is imperative to address that as well.
Yeah, Rick, correct me if I'm wrong, but the dog stays with Officer Ford, correct? This is his dog?
If this particular dog would, yes, I do agree with you 100% that, looking at this from a policy perspective would require more global approach to this, and that we should be addressing not just the issue of this particular opportunity, but in general, what would allow our school to have access to a resource dog. And the hope would be that, ultimately, maybe it's not just one. And there are schools with more than one where maybe, a first step would lead to a second and even to a third.
Okay. Thank you. I did see another hand that went up from the participants list. Andrew Turner, if you could unmute yourself and give your name and address for the.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hey folks, my name is Andrew Turner. I live at 172 Wampatuck. I've been waiting all night to say that I think this is the tail wagging the dog, which I think y'all got to. In this case, the dog is the policy and the tail seems to be Opry. And so I just wanted to add my voice to Tien's and say that I think that there's so many issues being mixed up here. Is this dog's purpose to provide therapy to students or to rehabilitate the police's relationship with the public? Is it to save money and take advantage of a convenient situation? Or is it to come up with a robust plan that includes a financial support? Should the handler be someone that is experienced in behavioral and emotional therapy, or someone whose primary job, I think, is to kind of monitor student behavior for transgressions and who carries a gun? I think most of what I've heard on the call tonight is folks are pro-therapy dog, but the handler shouldn't be the SRO. I guess we'll leave it to policy to figure that out. And I would recommend that that someone understand finally, what is the job description for the dog? What is the dog there to do? And decouple the dog from the handler. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is we're asking policy to take this up. Jen, can you do that?
Yes, we absolutely can. Can put it on our list of agenda items.
Okay, that's great.
And we can go over the current policy that relates to service and therapy dogs and expand upon that.
Great, thank you. And we'll go through Gary, I guess, to talk to you, Rick, if we have questions on this. Okay, sounds good. We have an action step. So number 8, and thank you very much for coming and presenting, Rick, and for answering everyone's questions and comments tonight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Number 8 is other items may not reasonably known 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Does anyone have? I just wanted to thank, we did meet on Saturday morning for our annual workshop to talk about goals for the year. And I just wanted to thank the members of the advisory committee and the education subcommittee, as well as there was a selectman there and the town administrator. It was a really productive conversation, and we really appreciated them joining us at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. So next is 9 subcommittee and project reports. So we'll go alphabetically. We'll start with Michelle.
Thank you. In no particular order, Gary and I are meeting with Carol Perez and the Metco families on Wednesday evening for our first Metco family coffee of this school year. So looking forward to that. The Foster School Building Committee and other members, I think Gary's going as well, is taking a field trip this week, go visit 2 elementary schools that have recently been partnered with the MSBA. I think it's Danvers and Marblehead on the North Shore. And then I think another time we're going to go see Carter and another South Shore town to our schools to just look and see what they've done with the spaces and how the construction went. And then the building committee has a meeting Wednesday night, so I'll look back on any things from there. Special ed subcommittee, I need to get with Jen and Tim to schedule a meeting before the 18th. I'd already reached out to Dr. Vinnis and we had picked a date, but it's actually after the 18th. So I'm going to circle back so we can come up with our goals for special ed subcommittee this year. The high school council has not met yet, but I think Rick is still listening. I think we have a meeting coming up soon. I don't know if that's on the books yet, Rick.
We do have it coming up. It's I think it's October 20th.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking. And I think that's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Next is Jen.
Thanks. All I have is that I attended the first 2 foster educational visioning sessions, and we have third one coming up this week. And we looked at design patterns, and we looked at different visioning goals, and it's been really interesting and fascinating. I've been enjoying it. And also I will be scheduling hopefully something with Carrie and Liza for a policy meeting, subcommittee meeting.
Great, thank you. Ness?
Hi, so our East School Council hasn't met yet. They meet in 2 more Wednesdays. So I will update you after that one. We had a finance subcommittee meeting today, went through some goals that we'll talk about at our next session. But then I wanted to make you aware of there were 2 community members, people from Hingham Sports Partnership, who came to present to us today. They're looking to send in an application to the Community Preservation Committee to ask for money. And the idea behind that is to build out a high school and wellness center. There have been different ideas and proposals talked about over the years. There's draft plans that were made several years ago, but as we look at the price tag for it, it just hasn't come up to the hit list of things that we needed to address first. So these 2 individuals came and presented to us to say that they would look into raising funds through the town and different fundraising avenues. But the idea behind it is to pay for this facility. The new idea proposed is to do a build out. There's a shed, an old concession stand that is right next to the high school and right on top of the field. It's currently being used for storage. Their idea would be to renovate have that be our health and facility. And again, they would do the work. They would look into the financing of it, do some fundraising, but they can't move ahead with the application until they get approval from the school committee to actually put in that application. So I know that this is last minute, but they are working on this application that's due next week. So talked about possibly scheduling a special school committee meeting just to address it. So Perry and I had talked about it earlier, and we thought we would chat with all of you about the possibility of doing that.
Yeah, maybe we want to check availability. I think we had talked about which day. Oh, Thursday the 7th. Are people available that I think between 5 and 7 or so?
I have a meeting. I have the foster visioning meeting at 6:30.
It's 6:30. What about if we moved it earlier to 4 or so?
I can do it 4.
You can do 4.
I can do that.
Might be a minute late, but I should just.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do 4. I have another meeting, another commitment at 7.
Okay.
Sorry, just let me check my work calendar really quick. Yes, Thursday 4. Yes.
Okay. All right, great. And Ness, could you send me some language for the agenda item?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Harry, is it a big deal if we make it 4:15?
No.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
That would help me a lot if we can do that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll do that, and it'll be over Zoom, so that should help. Okay. Carlos, you're up next.
So South School Council met on the 29th. They are working on the school improvement plans for the next fiscal year. Plus climate change. They keep like changing the name. The Climate Action Committee met on the 22nd. We had a very productive meeting, although at this stage we don't have any requirements, for the new buildings, and knowing that a new building comes every 5-10 years, and we want to make sure we address net zero. We want to make sure that the conversations are already taking place as we are discussing the public safety building and Foster School. And the committee is very pleased to report that those conversations are taking place, and they are pleased that although we don't have a policy in place yet, there is consideration as we move forward. So I will be reporting more on this as we move. We are in the process of, coming up with a charter for the committee, and they have appointed me also to the building committee. So somehow I'll be involved with the buildings. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Tim?
Nothing except that after having to the Hingham Educational Foundation, after rescheduling their fall party fundraiser, did have it last Thursday, and it was a successful event.
Great. And Liza?
For salary negotiations, we're meeting tomorrow, and the full school committee is invited to join us to meet with NESDEC to begin the work on the search for the new superintendent. And then salary negotiations is meeting on October 7th to discuss strategy. We're in the process of negotiations with HEA Unit A about some working conditions for this year regarding COVID. And so we're having a strategy meeting on the 7th, and then the 19th is our next negotiating session. And the Wellness Subcommittee is meeting on October 13th at 1:00 over Zoom, and to gather our goals and to start working on some initiatives about the social emotional efforts of we want to frame, trying to get an update from the staff at some point about the impact of return to school this year and social media on teenagers. And then on athletics, we're going to be delving into equity of the program, budgets, the structure of the program, et cetera. So that's the beginning of our work.
Great, thank you. And we are planning a curriculum school committee meeting on Friday, the 8th, to set our goals and priorities for the year. I also wanted to mention I had the opportunity to attend the Hingham Education Foundation fundraiser on Thursday. And it was a really great party, and we just really appreciate all the work they do for our schools in the past and going forward. They do a great deal. Lastly, I'll mention that the PRS PTO meeting is October 13th, and the school council meeting is at least tentatively on October 18th. So looking forward to attending those.
Carrie, sorry,
Yeah.
Carrie, I'm so sorry. It's Michelle. I neglected to mention that I attended the CPAC, the first meeting of this school year CPAC. Dr. Dennis was there. She gave a presentation on the IEP meetings and how those are being rolled out. And just a quick thank you to the group of fantastic parents who are leading the CPAC this year. They've really stepped up with a great board. They have a really a lot of work to do and a lot of plans for the year, but I'm really confident it was a great group, and they brought a lot of energy and a lot of really great experience to the table. So just wanted to let everyone know that.
Great. Yeah. And I echo your thanks to the new board. They're going to get some stuff done, I think. So, okay. I think that's it for the night. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Thank you. All in favor, we'll do roll call. Michelle?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Ness?
Aye.
Carlos?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Liza?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you, everyone. We're
Thank you.
adjourned at 8:41, and thank you for everyone who logged on to listen tonight.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.